Okay, good morning, everyone. We're having a bit of trouble with the our lighting, so it's what it is. So, welcome, everyone, and just give everyone the opportunity to settle a bit and give a bit of a reflection and just to encourage people to return, whatever the circumstance, whatever the case, the lights don't work, everything's falling apart, then just stop and return to stillness, return to silence. And that is always, it's always available, and it really is essential that we become very familiar with that we become very familiar with this quality of silence, of stillness. And it's not like a silence or of like absolute silence, and I got to stop every sound, and I got to be somewhere where there's absolutely no sound so I can be silent. It's like it's more the kind of the stillness or settledness of the mind that is not kind of reacting or reactive or reactionary. It's just this ability to settle back into a quality of some space, a spaciousness. Of course, awareness is the fundamental foundation of that. But it's the sense of silence and stillness is like where there's an ease of, okay, this is the way things are, and this is an opportunity to be present. So and in reality, why do we keep precepts? What is the purpose of precepts and sila in say in Buddhism? And much of it is the when the Buddha is asked what is the benefit of sila, of virtue, then he says non-remorse, and non-remorse is like, the mind is not it's not nagging at one. The mind is not second guessing itself. The mind is not kind of agitated, so that we can be present. We can experience a sense of stillness, a quality of silence within the heart. It's not sort of shaking, quavering, fearful, or agitated, restless. It's okay. I can be present, and it can return to the stillness. It can return to the quality of steadiness within the heart. So getting entangled in its what about, what should, what did I do it right? It's just the mind sort of nattering away. And so it's a benefit of sila, of virtue. And of course, that it's not the path of the Buddha's teachings are not just a moral injunction. I mean, it's a whole training of body, speech, and mind. But they all have a flavor to it. That sense of integrity and virtue has a flavor of stillness and settledness. Of course, the development of mindfulness and composure of mind, samadhi, is being able to very consciously be comfortable with settling. There can be so much striving and straining to get some kind of state of mind that one has conceived of as samadhi, and it's not very still, not very silent. So that if one is, say, aspiring to settle the mind, or aspiring to develop samadhi, then it's becoming familiar and comfortable with that sense of silence and stillness. It's always there within the heart. I mean, we covered over. We distract ourselves from it. That's the whole society and the whole modern culture of a kind of instant gratification and instant information keeps the mind busy. It keeps this sense of busy and definitely not still. And of course, when it gets busy, it's definitely not silent. Just giving oneself that encouragement to return to a place of stillness, and for many people that might be quite disconcerting, because lack of familiarity. And so that's why it's so important to be attending to, say, qualities of loving kindness, of compassion. Those are very soothing qualities within the heart. And then that allows one to be present with this sense of stillness. And of course, even just when we say stillness and silence, what is pops up in the mind, and what kind of feeling is associated with that. And oftentimes it can be a sense of like, what do I do? It's just, there's nothing here. and then that, but that sense of especially with that quality of being a really good friend to oneself, being a like a benevolent kind of presence within oneself. It's so important to be allowing one's attention to go there and to support that. So that, and the same with say wisdom. In the, oftentimes for us, when we think of wisdom, we're trying to think our way to wisdom, and trying to have wise thoughts, and so much of what wisdom is just being able to, whatever thought arises, just to be able to recognize it within this backdrop of silence and stillness. And for the most part, it sort of it just drops away, because it's not if we have a kind of a intellectually brilliant thought, it's just another thought, or we have some really selfish and mean thought. It's just it's sort of surrounded and met with this quality of stillness and silence. We're not reacting to it. So one recognizes which is the more beneficial to follow, or to support, or to encourage, and then they arise, they cease, they are uncertain, they're unsure. These thoughts and moods and impressions, but they, the ground that they're experienced from is the ground of this stillness and steadiness. So that to be just an encouragement to be presenting possibilities to the mind, and I think it's really important, in the sense that we tend not to present possibilities to the mind. We kind of assume some kind of fixed quality of I'm always like this, or it's always been this way, it's always going to be this way, and just to present possibilities to the mind that arise out of this very wholesome ground of being, of stillness, of steadiness, and not kind of shaking and being agitated with either the internal moods or the world outside. I mean, the world's going to do what it's going to do. Not for the most part, our minds are going to do what it's going to do, and but kind of receiving it with that clarity and that steadiness of stillness, of silence. And it's not the silence of suppressing anything. It is the silence that we return to. It's always there. So anyway, those are some thoughts this morning, and I'll open it up for questions. There's one question has come in: how can we deal with traumatic situations skillfully? Well, I mean, a lot of it depends on what it actually is. I mean, in the sense that there are situations that demand action. One needs to. One can't just be a passive recipient and and not be not motivate oneself to engage, and then others are. But I think it's important. I mean, it's just from the theme that I picked up that we do respond from a place of stillness or steadiness. That is to me, that's the essence of how we can discern more clearly what is a skillful response, and so that we're not just reacting out of fear or anger or an assumption of some inherited assumption, either through the society or through other people. So how are we experiencing it? What situation is it, and what is so I don't think that there's a categorical response to that, but it is the sense of skillful is always implies a response with integrity, so that there's a moral integrity, and a sense of responsibility of both taking responsibility for oneself, but also taking responsibility with the situation as it is. How do we draw other people in who can be supportive, who can be a how to be a support, because that's oftentimes one of the worst things of say trauma or traumatic situations is the feeling of being alone, and that is the sense of separation from others, so that learning how to reach out to others in different ways. Anyway, that's a thought that comes up. I'm not sure if Ajahn Karunadhammo has that.
Just one thought coming up that I wasn't quite sure from the way the question was asked, if it was referring to some traumatic event that's kind of in the present moment happening, which is, essentially, I think how Luang responded, how to hold that, deal with that skillfully. And the only other thing that comes to my mind is if that question was in reference to like a past traumatic event, say in childhood, or some sort of very traumatic thing that is recurring in the mind over and over again, which can happen in severe trauma, then that's where, and we've talked about this in many of the live streams, this question has come up quite a bit for past trauma, that, essentially a lot of the gentle compassion reflections and working very much with the bodily manifestation of them, and maybe most importantly, if it seems to be quite strong, working with someone as in a therapeutic relationship who has skill in dealing with it, and working with someone over time, it can be very useful, very important. That's the only other thought.
Right. Next question. I've been reading Philip K. Dick. He talked about remembering the world as an illusion. Is there a similar Buddhist view? Well, in a short word, no. In that of course, the Buddha and in the Buddhist teachings are, you're trying to not get caught in the various beliefs and assumptions that one has, about the world, and that the but the way that the Buddha, and illusion tends to mean that it's not real somehow, and therefore you can disregard it, and that's an extreme view. So then it's either there's just like a dissociative kind of relationship with the world, because it's just an illusion, and that's not very helpful. When the Buddha asks a rhetorical question of the world, what is the world? The eye is the world, the ear is the world, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind is the world. So what we experience through our senses is the world. So we are creating that world. We are it's a relationship that we have with the world, so that we're how we respond to sight, sound, smells, taste, touch, and our mental impressions is the world that we are building. And and that so we need to be engaged in that. It's not just an illusion, because it affects us. It creates states of happiness or suffering. And so it's just being able to engage in with that, with mindfulness and wisdom. Another way that the Buddha defines the world as that whereby one is a conceiver of the world and a perceiver of the world. That is the world. So that the world is built through the conceiving mind, the ideas that we form of it, and the perceptions we have. So that's, and of course that's all happening in here. And what we feel from that is not just an illusion, but it also it's what we assume as a solid world out there that is completely real, and that needs to be questioned.
Yeah, just amplify that. Just as the perceptions and concepts, as you were saying, are very, very tangible. They're also very mutable, changeable, so that they're not illusions. They are very real, and we react to them, just as you were saying, I think, Luang Pa. But one event, one situation, one way of perceiving can be something that you can change through practice, so that we can change them to be useful.
Yeah.
Perceptions. We have to have perceptions.
We have them anyway.
Yeah.
So you may as well learn to use them.
Yeah, and kind of mold them to ones that are going to lead to less suffering.
Yeah. Yes, and that's always the kind of for the Buddha. That's always bottom line. What is it that alleviates suffering, and what is it that contributes to suffering? Okay, and then is there a formal way to reflect on one's own goodness or the skillful or good things one has done in life? I can't quite recall the term in Pali. Well, certainly I mean, there's meditations they're called the anusati. They're recollections, so that. And of course, the The first, second, and third recollections are Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, which is of course it can be sort of out there, but then it's also, what is Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha in here in the heart, and and the recollection of a kind of gratitude for having had the opportunity to come into contact with, there's kind of the spirit of the Buddha, the teaching of the Buddha, the way of life, or the way of practice that the Buddha's laid down. So those are all kind of recollections that uplift the mind, and that's and you sort of think, like I think for myself, in order to be able to have lived a monastic life and to have met good teachers and to live in good place, well, there must have been some goodness there. I must have done something right, and that it's to be delighted in. Chahakanasati, like the recollection of generosity, of giving, of sharing, when we recollect those things. And it's important to make it conscious. Especially in like a Judeo-Christian perspective, it's like, you don't want to think too much about, the good things you've done. Either you're preparing yourself for some horrible disaster that's gonna come because you've thought too much good, or it's just too much sort of selfish too much ego involved, and I was, well, no, that it's more of a heart quality to recollect on those things that were skillful, that were good, that were beneficial, to be able to delight in that. The sila nusati, recollection of virtue, and integrity, keeping the precepts, making choices when that were really upright, and that's something to really be happy about. And Devatanusati, it was like a recollection of the devas, which is especially for most Westerners, to think of the devas as like, well, that was kind of, what's that mean? What, I can't sort of think about these kind of angels floating around in the sky somewhere. It seems silly, but the way that it's always explained is that whatever beings have taken a fortunate rebirth, or who are, and devas, or deva literally means bright beings, radiant beings, so that whatever beings are bright or radiant, whatever plane of existence are in, it's because of the skillful actions. They are receiving the fruits of their good actions. And then the extension of logic is, well, if there are those beings, then I also have done good deeds. I also have done things that are imbued with goodness. Those that will surely bring good results for me as well. So it's a something else. Is the last thing to consider is, and it's something that I have heard secondhand from about Sri Lankan culture, which is been a Buddhist culture for over 2,000 years, and one of the things that they do apparently is that it's like keeping a journal And there's a special word for the book that they use. And it's a book where we sort of jot down, good things that one has done. And one jots it down. And in times of, but particularly at death, but also at times of difficulty, and especially at death, then a relative or trusted friend will read that to you, so that you are recollecting the goodness that you've done. And I thought that was a really beautiful tradition and skillful means to help support that recollection of goodness.
I'm not sure if there was part of that question was trying to remember Pali term, maybe for goodness, as kusala. I'm not sure if that's the word that he might have been looking for in the question.
Kusala could be punya,
or punya.
Could be punya.
Yeah, right.
Punya is like punya is like what the Buddha says. Do not be afraid of punya. Punya is another word for happiness. Is recollecting that the goodness. Yeah. Okay. The idea of being a good friend to ourselves is so beautiful. Can you talk a bit about how self-compassion fits into that, especially in situations that are very challenging? Well, that's exactly it, sort of. And that I think one of the things is just, when one is in a challenging situation, if a good friend were in who and you're concerned about their well-being, and they were in a challenging situation, how would you respond to that? Would you say, that wasn't good enough. You didn't do enough there. You didn't. That was pretty poor. Nobody's going to like you for that. And of course you wouldn't do that. But what the voices in our own mind when we're in challenging situations, what do we say to ourselves? And it's usually, either fear or just that kind of self-critical, and go on and on and on. So, no, being a good friend to yourself is treating yourself in the way you would treat others, and recognize that, the kind response, the compassionate response, is to be really caring. And we need to do that to ourselves as well as to others. And Okay, next question. Ajahn Chah said Samadhi can bring much harm to the meditation, absorption meditation. How do you understand that? Well, I understand it that is you can't take one statement by a teacher and define his approach to things, because in the vast majority of his teachings, he's talking about just go ahead and do the meditation, allow the mind to settle, allow the mind to come together. But what it really means, I think, is that absorption into an object, it's a skill that can be both wholesome and unwholesome. And one of the things, because you can focus the mind really strongly and absorb the mind into an object, and you can feel quite good. I mean, it alleviates a lot of say discomfort, both physically and mentally. But it's not exercising much discernment. And also, one of the problems with, say, a skill in, say, being able to absorb the mind really quickly and strongly is it amplifies. I mean, it amplifies whatever we have in the mind. So it amplifies delusion as well. It amplifies views and opinions as well. And that can be really problematic. That can be really harmful because of the strength of mind that one has cultivated in that concentration, that can be directed to supporting, some pretty wacky views and some pretty awful behavior sometimes. So it's it's really it can be really harmful.
I just was recalling the way that Ajahn Jeff referred to just that process as if you're developing concentration in a mind that's filled with greed, hatred, and delusion, what you end up with is concentrated greed, hatred, and delusion. Exactly what you were just saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's never the point of the Buddha's teachings. It's just so important to be able to coming back to that quality of relinquishment, so that say using the samadhi to facilitate relinquishment and letting go. Okay, next one. Sometimes we think we're responding from stillness to abuse, but at the same time, it gets internalized and creates traumatic impression. How to discern that? Well, I mean, it's always a bit complicated and a bit but I think one of the things is that that's why one really wants to pay attention to the dukkha. That's the Buddha's kind of key. The key for opening up the heart is being able to recognize more clearly, oh, this is dukkha. But it's not just, oh, this is dukkha and this is my dukkha. But this is dukkha, and what are its causes? What are the conditions that have brought this into being? Is there a release from this dukkha? Is there, and that's where stillness is an important clue. So, okay, there is a possibility of stillness, but then there is a path. So there is a release from that dukkha. There is a cessation of that dukkha, but there's also a path leading to that. So that, and it is, as say the Noble Eightfold Path, but it's always in terms of, say, right view, right intention, right speech. It has to be right in the sense, not in right in terms of is it in harmony with truth? Is it in harmony with the purpose that one is trying to achieve? So that's the aspect of discernment that's needed. So that, because sometimes responding, well, from stillness, we can Even the internalizing is still, we're internalizing the dukkha. And so that just gaining more clarity, more understanding, more skill in working with the various ways that we have, that there is dukkha. Okay, it's a brilliant advice on the merit journal. Yeah, I was always impressed with that. I heard about that a long time ago. It's really. Okay, how to overcome remorse and guilt and not being able to fulfill a wholesome deed for a loved one, such as not being able to meet them in their last days and be part of a funeral in pre-COVID times. Well, I mean, it's really important to recognize that there's a huge difference between remorse and guilt. I mean, there is an appropriate sense of, oh, that was something I really, it was wholesome. I should have done. It would have been a good thing to have done. And then, that it doesn't feel good. One was remiss in some way or another. And factors can be very complicated. Our own delusions being one of them, and the complications of the world around. I mean, that can be so that one can experience, say, remorse or regret, but from a practice perspective or a Buddhist perspective, and that is a motivation for a skillful application, like changing, improving, getting a game plan going of how to prevent that in the future, how to alleviate that, or how to work with the situation so that maybe it wasn't exactly the say one missed that particular opportunity, but then how does one respond to it so that one can be supportive of a person, especially this particular case of say missing and being a part of a funeral, and that one can reach out in different ways. It can be a motivation for reaching out. Guilt is quite different. Guilt is this where one keeps revolving and cycling. The sense of me keeps revolving and cycling around. Wrong. I was wrong, and I'm bad because of it, and is this sense of guilt keeps cycling around the sense of me, and then me is very diminished by that. So then it's an important recognition to understand the difference, because the say a sense of remorse at one's own unskillfulness is a sign of kind of conscience, which is great. One of the things the Buddha called hiri and otapa, and Ajahn Jeff is he put a lot of care into trying to find words that were not so loaded as original translations, older translations. So he's conscience and concern, and hiri and ottappa are say that this, a feeling of remorse or regret, but it's the basis is here. Hiri and ottappa is very, very wholesome, and so the Buddha calls it. These are the two protectors of the world. So that sense of understanding. Okay, that was unskillful. That wasn't so good. There's a conscience that one feels, and there's a concern, because conscience is about the feeling within oneself, and it comes out of a respect for oneself. And the concern that one feels for others, it comes from the respect for others. So that hiri and ottappa, say remorse or regret that is based in hiri and ottappa, is very wholesome. It's skillful. It's got this very and as the Buddha says, these are the protectors of the world. Guilt is more just, it gets entangled with the sense of me and kind of a blame and fear and worry, and it is a endlessly unsatisfying. So that to be able to be able to parse out those two, the differences, and incline the mind to the protectors of the world. These are beautiful qualities, and then that's a motivation for, because you can we don't always get things right. It's just the reality of human existence. Whether you're a person living in the world, or a monk in a monastery, we don't always get it right, and you have to be able to acknowledge that or recognize that, and to be able to ask for forgiveness, or to find a way to express a sense of remorse that one feels for an unskillful act that one has done, and it isn't as if even like a fully awakened Buddha gets it right all the time. There's like in the monk's discipline, the Vinaya, there's the Buddha makes rules trying to rectify, trying to get things back on track, and sometimes he overreaches and it creates more problems, or sometimes he underreaches, he underestimates how deluded people can be, and the lays down a rule that the monks and the nuns immediately found ways to get around. So it's navigating the world is always it's an ongoing process, and just recognizing that the protectors of the world are a really important quality for navigating. But guilt is a complicating factor that creates more dukkha. Okay, we're 7:51. Let's see what. There is only one more question. John, I need a more skillful means to follow the news, especially during the pandemic. It feels necessary to be a good, caring citizen, but it is way disturbing. It's very disturbing because of the tactics of the media use. I just step away from the media. The whole point of media is you're immediately a consumer. They are not giving you news, in order for you to be an informed, intelligent citizen, you are a consumer, you're a customer. and I just pull back.
Avoiding those of foolish ways.
Avoiding those foolish ways. Yeah.
Associating with the wise.
Associating with the wise. And, yeah, it's important. Okay. Take care, everyone.